findings. And this is basically what they said to sum it up. It says, the thesis is therefore clear. The Pentateuch is a Greek work inspired by Greek sources. Understand, the Pentateuch is a Greek work inspired by Greek sources. To just piss some Hebrew off if they're watching it. The book is constructed in 6 chapters each, followed by bibliographs relating to that chapter. An index of sources and an index of authors closes the volume. It says thus, the thesis that the author pursues in the sequel of the first volume is that the Pentateuch in its legal parts is inspired by Platonic sources to which the 70, if you understand the letters of Orestes, the 70 Jews, had access in the Great Library of Alexandria. The argument is simple and comparative. The greater number of Pentateuchal laws, even if they had some Semitic precursors, seem copied from the Athenian law, or more precisely, the Platonic laws. Beyond this argument, the author proposes that the laws of Plato constitute a new hermeneutical, which basically means interpretation, a new hermeneutical key for the ideology not only of the Pentateuch, but the whole of the Bible. The Bible is the official national literature mandated according to the same instructions of the Platonic laws. If you understand that, that is big. So understand, Merkin, he was real careful in his book to not, say it flat out. He said what he said, and he let the information speak for itself. And if you got enough knowledge, you came to the right conclusions. But you had later scholars come out and say, what he meant. They reviewed the book. And the implications are, well, if this is all true, which it looks, then the Greeks created Christianity, which I've been saying. They created Judaism. It's all bullshit. Now, American doesn't really come straight out and say it, try to make it as if, these people actually exist, because I doubt he want to really get in, on the bad side of Jews who running everything. But it's as if these people existed, and then you could somehow say, well, the Greeks didn't want to put out the truth. So they basically distorted. Like, they want to say that the Hebrews existed, but the Greeks didn't want to put out the truth, so they kind of distorted the information from the Hebrews about, what they actually said, which don't make sense, because if you didn't like it, you wouldn't have put out nothing. You wouldn't have said, you wouldn't even did the information, you would have put out your own stuff. So the story of getting these 72 Hebrew elders to put out this information doesn't make sense. Now, in understanding that you're going to do what they did with this whole creation, they could have done that, which it looks like they did. Go get 70 so-called Hebrews and get them to do this so-called translation just to have a record of it. Now, whoever came up with this whole Black Hebrew Israelite doctrine understands all this. They know, which is why, they don't really want to jump on this. They wouldn't dare read any of those books because they understand the implications. Now, the whole thing is, they understand that when you go back and do the research, it all points to white Greeks. But when you leave that little door open saying, possibly, this is what they're piggybacking on. Now, this is the reason why King James must be black, as I said. Because if King James is black, then you can say, well, God gave King James the true translation, the real translation. Don't read what these Greeks talk about. Read the King James version, the real translation. Or they'll say, the Masoretic text, because it's in Hebrew. Stuff like this. But what they don't say and what they don't address is, how come your God gave the knowledge to the white man before his chosen people? Think about that. Clearly the Greeks had this information first. So why is it that God gave it to them before his chosen people? Why would he give it to them? Who would change his image and change everything about the book and make all these so-called lies and so on and so forth. But you expect us to take the same stuff that was supposedly created, in deception, and believe you on it with no proof. So now understand this, and this is what these Hebrews are not getting. If you don't do the research, you're not going to know this. And this is painstaking research. It is so much. You got to be crazy. You got to be obsessed, which, I am, and I really was back then when I was digging into all this. You got to be, because there's so much, you have to dig into. And if you learn it in truth, you'll figure it out. I'll lab on this later. You'll figure it out. So anybody that's doing research on the Jews, the Hebrews, 4th century BCE, if you're looking for anything on the Jews prior to 4th century BCE, there's only 4 sources that you can really go to. 4. And of those 4 sources, only one has real tangible, evidence that you can really believe. And he's the only one that everybody really goes to. So this is how you can break this stuff down. This is how you know who's who and who's doing the research. Because anything anybody said besides these 4 people is pseudo. It's bullshit. It's iffy. So these 4 people are the suspect one. I start with him first. Josephus, right? Josephus. Then you have Aristobulus. Then you have Diodorus Siculus, who this is largely about, what Merkabah wrote it. And then you have Hecataeus. Hecataeus and Diodorus is basically the primary people that he's sourcing for this book that Merkabah wrote, because that's who you have to source. If you arguing with somebody about this and they're not citing, which the Hebrews will not, they won't, and you're going to find out why in a second. If they're not citing Hecataeus and Diodorus Siculus, forget it, because it's pseudo. It's pseudo. We're going to get into this in a second, but understand that. So you have Hecataeus, who is a large part of this book. He was 25 years old when Kemet fell. So he had 25 years of seeing Kemet being ruled by Egyptians. 25 years of that. And I believe he died in 550 BC. So he had 25 years, or that's when Kemet fell, was 550. So he knew, he had knowledge. Hecataeus understood what was going on. He's a historian. Look him up, he's a Greek historian. And he has 2 very important works that everybody knows about when you start researching this guy, Hecataeus. So you have Yanela, which Yanela basically means genealogy. Yanela Greek means genealogy, right? So Yanela genealogy, and Storia. So Storia is basically your history. So Storia, Greek history, that's where we get story, Storia. Yanela genealogy. That's his book. That's what it translates into. The most important book is his one that's basically on his journey. The journey that he fucking took, supposedly, around the world, which is pronounced Periostos Gamma Sigma. Periostos Gamma Sigma. I got to say it a couple times to get it out. But it basically means journey around the world. So you have these important books by Hecataeus. And he's known for these books because he supposedly traveled and did this research on these civilizations of people, which is why he must be cited. Now, there are only about 300 or so fragments of these books in existence. And you have Theodorus, who is known for being, a person that had this library of books, of rare books. And supposedly he had probably a more fulfilled book or manuscript of Hecataeus' words. So it was fragments, but probably more complete than what we have today. Now understand, Diodorus Siculus was born, about 400 years after Hecataeus. So we're talking about hundreds of years later that he's referencing Hecataeus and his works, Diodorus, right? So that's one of the important things to understand. When people are going to reference, they're going to Diodorus, who is referencing Hecataeus, who is important, because if you're going to say what somebody said, we need to know who this guy is and what he said exactly. And the thing with Diodorus and his writings, because Diodorus is paraphrasing Hecataeus. He's paraphrasing him because he's not going directly from manuscript, copying what he said specifically. He's paraphrasing from the fragments that he had. Now, as scholars, you have the fragments that all scholars agree upon that Diodorus cites. These are the fragments that everybody say, these ones is okay, they're authentic, we believe these are real. And you have the fragments that they don't have that is questionable. And for many reasons, which we'll get into some of them, because they don't know. Just like Diodorus, he speculates a little bit, but he's paraphrasing what's said. So now the whole thing is, of course, you have Hecataeus, who was born, around the time the Egyptians was ruling. And here's a guy who lived through the rulership of the Egyptians and lived through the conquest of the Persians. Now, if this dude was an historian and he traveled the world, as it says with his books, he's supposed to have traveled the world and everything like that, and did a genealogy and all this, at some point he had to speak to Jews. There's no way he could not have spoken to Jews or Hebrews. He had to have, and he had to have mentioned them. Now, according to Diodorus, he never mentions them. He never says that he spoke to any Jews. In fact, he says that what he heard about the Jews came from the Egyptians, which makes it even more suspect that how could you not have spoken to any Jews? And it says here, let's read. The undisputed fragments of Hecataeus in Diodorus Siculus' library, Book 1, display no awareness of the Pentateuch, while the account of the Jews in the Book 40 is so divergent from the Pentateuch as to guarantee that Hecataeus did not have access to Jewish writings, translated or otherwise. These difficulties are usually overcome by postulating that Hecataeus learned about the Pentateuch from Jewish priests living in Alexandria. But a second difficulty is that in Diodorus Siculus' library, Book 1, Hecataeus repeatedly named Egyptian priests as his sources. Nowhere did he claim to have had contact with Jews. If Hecataeus had contact with Jewish priests or had access to Jewish writings, he would have doubtless have said so to enhance the authority of his account. But Hecataeus made no such claims in undisputed fragments. Third, the detailed information Hecataeus allegedly presented about the Jews in Book 40 was not quoted or utilized by any author from 320 BCE to the time of Posidonius and Diodorus Siculus in the 1st century BCE. That Theophrastus read Hecataeus is certain. Yet, the description of Herodox Jews and Theophrastus on piety markedly differed from the detailed knowledge of Orthodox Judaism in the allegedly Hecataean passage in Book 40. Manetho's dependence on Hecataeus of Abdera is certain, yet his knowledge of the Jews was limited to their location in Jerusalem. That's all they know about them, where they came from. They didn't really know much. 2nd century BCE Alexandrian Jewish writers such as Aristobulus and Pseudo-Aristeas, which the letters of Aristeas is pseudo, and they had already came to the conclusion that Jews wrote this later on. The extensive research in the classics, including Hecataeus of Abdera, Aegyptica, but failed to discover a single passage in which an early Hellenistic author of Hecataeus' time or earlier quoted Jewish scripture. That so many writers on the Jews who were familiar with Hecataeus knew nothing of the context of Diodorus Siculus' library suggests that the latter passage did not derive from Hecataeus. Meaning it's all bullshit. And you have to understand, this is the foundation evidence of proving the validity of the Bible. This is what you have to go to. The whole thing about the letters of Aristeas, all this stuff, it's all suspect, it's all pseudo. The only real tangible proof is what we have from Diodorus on Hecataeus' supposed writing of, what took place. That he doesn't say he met any Jews or anything like that. So I get Hebrew after Hebrew, quoting, Josephus, as if Josephus was this major knowledgeable source who had, real good provable information, where he was always quoting from Aristobulus, which Aristobulus' information was pseudo. And it's even saying here in the sightings. It says down here, Josephus, in conducting a similar search on ancient writings for reference to the Jews, had to resort to the Jewish forgery pseudo-Hecataeus. And this is on the page. It says Aristobulus, writing circa 150 BCE, will likely have cited the source behind Diodorus Siculus' library, which he didn't, if it existed at the time. And Josephus is citing Aristobulus, and basically we know Aristobulus stuff is pseudo-Hecataeus, because if it's not, then he would have stated what Diodorus had, which he does not, or something better, since he lived, before him. But we don't get that. We don't get none of that information. So, bunch of stuff to look at. Now let's continue down here. It says, thus, despite the doubt attached to many quasi-historical details in Aristobulus' works, it still appears likely that he was correct in such basic details as the Septuagint originating under Ptolemy II Philadelphus, who I always talk about, and the involvement of 70 scholars associated with the Judean Perusia in executing this project. We may therefore date the Septuagint with reasonably high confidence to the period of 273 to 269 BCE under Ptolemy II Philadelphus, who was a white Greek. Since the Septuagint provides the first objective external evidence for the composition of the Pentateuch, the date of the Septuagint translation becomes a terminus ab quem for the books of Moses, which that's Latin. That basically means this is the only time that you could date this, around this time. That's basically what it means. This is the limit, or the only time you could date something. There exists no external evidence that the Pentateuch was written earlier than this time. Boom. Than this time of Ptolemy II Philadelphus. A proposed date of composition for the Pentateuch anytime prior to 269 BCE is permitted by current evidence and must be seriously considered. Significantly, although external evidence for the Pentateuch is lacking prior to the Septuagint translation of 273 to 269 BCE, the Septuagint set off an explosion of derivative Jewish writing in the 3rd century BCE, both in Syria and in Egypt. The following is a list of the earliest known Jewish writings with approximate dates of composition. None of it predates the Septuagint Greek or the 4th century BCE. And as I said, if the stuff is legit, we should find stuff. Historians, people around that time should have been talking about, there's no way in the world you can have what happens in the Old Testament, not written about as much, and then have stuff that is like so meaningless, like just talking about the gravestones of the Greeks. So elaborate, same thing with the Egyptians. And if they do all this stuff depicting what happened in these people's life that we can find, no way all of this stuff goes down and then we find nothing on the Hebrews. And again, as I pointed out, Herodotus, Greek historian, says nothing about the Jews. One of the things he cited says, neither Herodotus nor Hecataeus of Abdera claimed to have consulted the Jews. Rather, the Egyptians were regularly cited as authorities throughout Diodorus Book 1, thought to have drawn heavily on Hecataeus of Abdera. Hecataeus of Abdera appears to have drawn exclusively on Egyptian oral sources supplemented by Herodotus. Never talked to any Jews because they didn't exist. It says here, Hieronymus of Cardia, the historian of the Wars of the Diadochi, 323, when Alexander died, to 278 BCE, fought under Antigonus Monothalamus in Palestine in 312 BCE and was assigned to supervise the collection of Alsfat or asphalt from the Dead Sea. He never mentioned the Jews. I'll leave it at that. And it says down here, the earliest Greek writers who mention the Jews thus provide no external evidence of new developments in the evolution of the Torah. At the time of the Elephantine Papyri, 494 to 400 BCE, we have authoritative Jewish priestly regulations, but no evidence that these have been committed to writing. The Elephantine Papyri also testify to toleration of practices contrary to the Pentateuch. As late as 315 BCE, Theophrastus described contemporary sacrificial practices among the Jews that the Hebrew Bible condemns as heterodox. The first mention of Moses as Jewish founder and lawgiver occurred in Hecataeus' A Aegyptica in 320 to 315 BCE. Manetho also mentioned Moses probably not long thereafter. Neither author attributed writings to Moses, although both appear to have viewed him as the lawgiver of the Jews. Other than the disputed fragment of Hecataeus in Diodorus Siculus Library 40.3, the Septuagint translation is the first definite evidence of Jewish writings. So it's clear as day what's going on here. The stuff that they was writing about contradicts the Hebrews, their supposed doctrine. And they're reading this stuff and it's like, no way this could be Hebrews if this stuff is real, because they're doing stuff contrary. And then to really dig deeper into this, you got to understand that these are Greeks. Plain and simple. These are people who are, even if they're black, they're people who was basically grew up in Greek understanding of things. This is later after the conquest of Egypt. Egypt is over 100 years gone now and conquered around this time. So we're talking about a couple hundred years later. So they are basically being indoctrinated into this Hellenization and the rituals. So contrary to what was written about, what must have happened is they came up with the story. They came up with who these Jews are supposed to be. And they got priests, they got people to go out and spread this story so it reached the ears of historians and people who was documenting the times. So all these historians you have, when you start to look and research this, they gathering around and trying to figure out, okay, we know these people are Jews. These people are supposed to be these people, but they're saying this is what happened to them. This is who they are, and so on and so forth. Let's validate this. And then they're going out. Now, we don't even know, one, Hecataeus, and what he actually said. We don't even know, because everything seems to be in, fragments. We can't get no real information because it's in fragments. But they have the fragments to say, oh, this person existed because we have fragments. But there's still no way to know if he existed or if he actually wrote this stuff. Diodorus he's paraphrasing. He's going off of what he thinks. Remember, this dude was born 400 years later. He don't know if Hecataeus is real, but he got his hands on this information that could have been easily planned for him to find and write about later, or anybody to find and write about. The point is, there's no real proof of these Jews. There's absolutely none. And just like we can go and find the tombs of all these other people, there should be mass tombs of these Jews. But the Hebrews believe, oh, God took them away. Oh, why don't God take y'all dead people away? Why did God leave them in the ground? But he takes our dead people away. Okay, where's the civilizations? Where's the artifacts? Where's the writings? Where's any of it? There's no proof. And then, again, why would your God give your doctrine to the white man before you if you are his chosen people? Because we can clearly see before King James, we had Ptolemy II Philadelphus. We had this whole creation of this Hebrew mess. Period. It's all pseudo. All of it. I don't even take the fragments as being truth. And we still only have a fragment of the Septuagint, so we don't even know what it originally said. Clear as day, as time went on, they added to the story until you get up to Saint Jerome all the way in the Vetus Latina and then the Latin Vulgate, what everything that was done with that whole debacle. And it's like, what is this stuff? And you people believe this? Are you serious? All of the mess surrounding this because they don't teach it. Okay, so nothing else needs to be said. People are free to believe what they want to believe, but the proof is in the pudding, and there's no proof in this pudding for these people. They have nothing. You have faith, you have belief. The tablets are not proven to have been speaking towards actual Jews from the Bible. It's just that simple. It's too many issues. The fact that we have all this secrecy surrounding these tablets and who found them, when they found them, where they came from, or what have you, is all secret, not public information. Then the tablets contradict what's in the Bible. Huge red flag. There's so much stuff surrounding it that it's just, you got to use common sense at some point. But they want desperately for these tablets to be real when there's no proof that they're real. You're not going to find any concrete proof that these people existed. Why are we looking for these people? Every other fucking civilization, even the damn Mayans who are supposed to have disappeared, we got more proof that these people were actually here. They left stuff, ruins, like, carvings and shit. We don't find nothing. They left nothing. No bodies, no civilizations, no ruins, no nothing. They left nothing. But in the Bible, keep giving you all these stories about God destroying Israel. But we keep digging up Egyptian artifacts in fucking Israel. How many times he destroyed, but we digging up Egyptian artifacts because it was part of the Egyptian empire. You guys gotta wake up. You gotta wake up. Stuff is not real. The King James Version, written 1604, 1611. It is not giving you any black history. It's giving you what they knew was going down during that time. It is not, the King James Version wasn't written 2,000 years ago. It's the King James Version, his version of the accounts, which again, he's a Mason. King James was a Mason. Man who edited the Bible, Sir Francis Bacon, is considered one of the fathers of Freemasonry. You got to start taking all this stuff into account and snap the fuck out of it. This is not black history. It's distorted history to give you justification for what, what's done to us. And this is old shit. Because again, as I said, you go back and you look at, in real history, what the Hebrews are said to have been doing in the Bible. The Greeks are the only people on the planet that fits that MO in actual history. So the Greeks are the only people who fit going out and conquering these African lands. Same thing with the Romans later on. They're the only people who fit it, right? They're the only people who fit it. And then at the same time, you have them being the ones who gives us, this doctrine first. Think about that. So in the Bible, again, go and destroy these people, namely the Hivites and the Perizzites and the Jebusites, what have you. And then we find out that these people are from the line of Ham, which he's supposed to be the progenitor of African people, a black race, right? And then in real history, we go back and look and we see what's going on. They're wiping out African tribes in real life. That's what's going on. So you want to trace this book around being black and everything like that, and you believe it in this book and giving any type of aid to this book, is you going against black people, plain and simple. It's there to justify what happened to us, but it's a lot deeper than all that. So read the book, by all means. Read it, understand it, learn it, love it. It's one of the greatest books ever written, and you need to know it. But as far as you trying to find any real proven evidence or what have you, plenty of evidence. It's not proven evidence. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of evidence though, but nothing is proven, nothing is concrete that would say definitively, this is Jews, this is Jesus. It's none, it's nothing. Faith is all you got, that's it. So yeah, wanted to get into this video real quick. I have a lot already on this information. If it's not enough for you, go and do your own research, be real with yourself. You want to believe the tablets existed and what have you, more power to you, go do what you do. It's not going to prove the entire book and everything else. Just that simple. But yeah, thanks for taking the time to listen to my rant and calm down a little bit. I get hyped with this shit. But yeah, make sure you guys take advantage of stock market series. Remember, when you buy this new video, you get all the videos for this weekend. It's going to change. Same thing with Never Pay a membership. The price is going to go back up. And right now, take advantage of it. Otherwise, at this low price, it's going to go back up, especially once the site finishes, because it's going to be a lot better. And, I want my real subscribers to be on there, Never Pay Again members or what have you. So take advantage of these sales. Keep doing your research. I'll let you guys know ahead of time in the next live stream. I got a lot coming to YouTube and Merkabah Academy. So yeah, stay tuned. And yeah, thanks for watching.